If there is a single issue or a single event that red-pilled more people in the last 3 years than the Black Lives Matter riots in the name of George Floyd, I don't know what it is. I don't know if we have numbers on how many Democrats converted to Republican voters because of those George Floyd Black Lives Matter riots, but those numbers have to be astronomical. Astronomical. And the left is trying to do this again. They have canonized their next martyr. The man's name is Jordan Neely. It's a very sad story, a very tragic story, actually. It happened in New York City on the subway. Jordan Neely, the left right now in the mainstream media are calling him unhoused. That's the newest name for homeless. I reject the term homeless and unhoused I reject the premise of this. People that are homeless, people that we think of as homeless, are homeless because they are severely mentally ill and or addicted to drugs. They could have a home if they wanted. Maybe not own a home at this moment, but there's plenty of places of shelter where they could live. They choose not to because they're severely mentally ill and oftentimes addicted to drugs or both. Jordan Neely certainly fits this profile. Severely mentally ill. I don't know the profile of whether he's addicted to drugs, but his behavior would suggest that he was. On the subway in New York City, he got into an altercation with a former Marine Corps veteran. And in the course of this altercation, Jordan Neely died. He lost his life. Here's the thing. We don't know the details of exactly what happened yet. We don't know what Jordan Neely was doing, what he was saying, what he was threatening. We don't know the reaction of this Marine Corps veteran. We don't know if he was threatened. We don't know if he did something, used excessive force on Jordan Neely. We just don't know. So the left telling you that this is a case of a white Marine Corps veteran murdering an innocent black man on the subway, you can tell right from the outset that that's a false narrative because we just don't know. The white Marine Corps veteran, we don't know his name yet, was released by police. Police did not think that they had a case, so there's obviously some evidence that exonerates this man. It wasn't just a brutal chokehold in the subway, like all the headlines are saying. But what the mainstream media is doing, what the left is doing right now, is they are deliberately fomenting racial divide in our nation exactly the same way that they did after the death of George Floyd. And they are deliberately ignoring, again, this is their playbook. They mastered it with George Floyd. They're simply applying it again now to Jordan Neely. They are ignoring the history, the criminal history, and the behavior of Jordan Neely that led to this altercation in the first place. So we're going to talk about this big picture. We're going to talk about this politically. We're going to talk about this criminally. And we're going to talk about the media coverage. What actually happened that led to this death? Is it a racially charged murder the way the left is saying? And if not, then what's the real story? So let's get to it. Guys, you have to get 4 Patriots. China already screwed us over once with COVID. I do not want that to happen again. But right now, the Chinese Communist Party is being super shady. In fact, they're hoarding massive amounts of food. Over 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half of its rice, and over half of its wheat. But when they're asked about it, China does what China does. China lies. The question we should be asking is, why is China hoarding food? The answer is because China thinks that we are all on the verge of a global food shortage. And since China is the world's #1 food importer, they rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed, so they cannot afford to mess up. Or what are they going to face? Riots, civil panic, maybe even worse, when their people, over 1 billion people, can't eat. So what does this mean for me and for you? 2 words: food shortages. Global food shortages are going to happen, and they are going to impact us here in the United States. That's why you must stock up on 4 Patriots survival food. I highly recommend you begin your own stockpile of 4 Patriots survival food kits. The kits are compact. They stack easily for easy storage. They have different breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food if you use my promo code Liz at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com, type my code Liz to get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food. That's 4patriots.com, promo code Liz. Okay, so I got to tell you, when I first saw these headlines about Jordan Neely, the headlines are exactly what you would expect from the mainstream media. Black man dies in chokehold at the hands of a white man, a Marine Corps veteran. And those headlines are brutal. Those headlines make you think, gosh, if this really happened, if it was an innocent black man and a white man just murdered him, that's horrible. It's horrible no matter what skin color either of the people are, if that's the facts of the case. But of course, the mainstream media has lost your trust. They've lost my trust. Everybody should distrust them at this point because they deliberately misrepresent reality in order to serve their political agenda. So what I did today, when I started reading more in depth about this circumstance, this tragedy that happened in the New York City subway, I realized that no, they were not portraying this accurately. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of what I found. So first of all, the left's strategy of portraying this as a racially motivated hate crime, the targeted murder of a black man at the hands of a white man, is already effective. We'll talk about what their motivation for doing this is in a couple minutes, but it's already effective in the sense that you can see this video. This is a video of the New York City subway, and there are protesters who are protesting the death of Jordan Neely. They are gathered together. You can see it. They're gathered together, tons and tons of them. And if this reminds you of the very beginnings of what happened after the death of George Floyd, then yes, you would be correct. This is what it looks like. They're yelling for justice. They're yelling for racial justice. They're yelling against white people. And perhaps it's no surprise that who killed Jordan Neely is the question, because the name of this person has not been released, perhaps fairly at this point, because there's no charges that have been brought against the person. So why should this person be subjected to the leftist rage mob? I would argue that given the bloodlust that we've seen in the Black Lives Matter movement, that an innocent person shouldn't have their name splashed all over unless and until they've been proven guilty, or at least until charges have been brought against them, right? Until charges have been brought against them, you can shield the privacy of this individual. Maybe that's not the point right now. Black Lives Matter, the left, have designated Jordan Neely as their next racial martyr. They have decided they're going to canonize this criminal into a saint in order to push their political agenda. So this is a photo of the death of Jordan Neely. This is you can see what the guy looks like. I'm sure we're going to find his name out pretty soon. This is the chokehold during which Jordan Neely stopped breathing and ultimately lost his life. Again, sounds bad. Certainly a tragedy when anybody loses their life. But what were the circumstances? What were the actions? What was happening in the lead up to this? That's the most important part of this story. And nobody on the left even cares. Nobody's even asking this question. Like, did Jordan Neely attack this guy? Was he threatening to kill him? Was he doing something to harm someone else? Or was he on his way to harming someone else? If you don't ask that question, if that's not the first question out your mouth, then you're not a journalist for one thing, but you are using the death of this man to further your political agenda. Instead, what the left is doing is they are portraying Jordan Neely as not just a martyr, but they're portraying him as a likable performance. A likable performer. He just loved to dance and sing for people. That's how the left is eulogizing Jordan Neely. In fact, this video has gone around multiple times. He used to perform on the subway, impersonating Michael Jackson. You can see he's actually quite good at it. And they're making it seem like this is what he was doing when he entered this altercation or when he had this confrontation with this Marine Corps veteran. There's no evidence that this is what he was doing. That seems fairly harmless, a little showboating on the subway. It's a weird thing to do, but it's not inherently harmless. What the left isn't telling you is who Jordan Neely is. They want to know who the Marine Corps veteran is, but who is Jordan Neely? Well, Jordan Neely had been arrested 44 times by the New York City police. 44 times he'd been arrested. This guy was a frequent flyer with the police. He actually had an outstanding warrant for felony assault. But the police in New York weren't doing their due diligence. They weren't serving this arrest warrant. No. He was walking free, even though he was clearly severely mentally ill, and he had been arrested 44 different times. ABC, by the way, this is not just hearsay. ABC reports he'd been arrested more than 40 times in the subway for crimes like public lewdness and assaulting a senior citizen. According to sources, witnesses to his final moments told police that Neely was erratic and hostile. According to other sources, Neely was actually yelling, "I'm ready to die." You've heard before about suicide by cop, right? Where individuals who want to die also want their death politicized, and so they do something aggressive to provoke police to shoot them. Police are very familiar with this. It's something, we don't talk about it a lot because we don't want to encourage it. This seemed like something of the same nature but maybe more like suicide by citizen. If you threaten people enough, if you threaten to kill them often enough, if you assault them frequently enough, at some point, someone is going to fight back. Someone is going to defend themselves, and you are going to be harmed. That's simply the reality of life. He yelled, "I'm ready to die," as he was being erratic and hostile. And by the way, we'll know more details about what went down beforehand. The truth will come out. Black Lives Matter and the left won't care, but you and I will know the truth. We will know whether this Marine Corps vet was justified in his use of force or whether he wasn't, and we will continue our analysis accordingly when we get those further details. But right now, the person that is the most to blame for Jordan Neely's death is actually New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He's the one who is allowing criminals, violent criminals like Jordan Neely, if he'd been arrested for lewdness and assault of a senior citizen, to walk free on the streets. He's the one who is pulling police back. Progressive prosecutors and mayors who don't actually believe in the rule of law, who have allowed the Black Lives Matter movement to poison the narrative about what criminal justice is, what crime is, and what justice is, and instead supplant our idea of justice with this racialized Marxist nonsense. The reason Jordan Neely was even out free walking on the streets, the reason that he was yelling erratically, being hostile, the reason that he had threatened to kill people, the reason he had assaulted a senior citizen is because the Black Lives Matter movement has told a gigantic lie. They have said, oh, there's a disproportionate number of black men who are incarcerated, and this is due to racism, instead of due to the actions of the black men who are incarcerated who committed the crimes of their own volition and not because of the color of their skin. And because of that, police forces that are under the direction of radical leftists like Eric Adams deliberately choose not to prosecute criminals who are black because they don't want convictions of black men, because that just adds to the disproportionate rate of incarcerated black men. We have no evidence at this point, none, that there's racial animus that was part of the calculation of this encounter. In other words, we have no evidence that this white Marine entered this altercation with this black subway vagrant because he was black. We have no evidence. The left is making, that's a humongous assumption to make. That's an absurd assumption to make. And yet the left has made that assumption and wants you to make that assumption, wants me to make that assumption, wants our criminal justice system to make that assumption. That is so unfair. It's so racist towards the white Marine veteran. They are actively putting motive in his mind and in his mouth and in his actions when they don't have any proof of it just because of the color of his skin. That is racism. The two elements of racism that we know for a fact are present in this situation, in the death of Jordan Neely, are the racism of the Black Lives Matter movement and Eric Adams defunding the police, which harms black people, and the left accusing this Marine veteran of being racist just because he was white. Those are the only two elements of racism that we know for a fact existed in this altercation. Maybe at some point we'll find out something different, but right now, that's all we know. That's all we know. And by the way, Jordan Neely, this is not just a passing report about, oh, he'd been arrested more than 40 times on the subway. If you look on Reddit, there's a whole page of people who have formed this little community in the wake of the death of Jordan Neely, talking about how he assaulted them. We're going to read some of those in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about Genucel. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to Brazil or Colombia or wherever, and you can get crazy stuff done to your face. But why on earth would you do that? Now you can look years younger right here, right before your very eyes during the Genucel Mother's Day sale. I want to read you a real review I got from Genucel.com. Claire said, I absolutely love Genucel. My skin feels so good, tighter, younger, with a more even tone, and I only used it for a week. Claire says, my best advice for everyone is take a before picture. It's true, nothing works like Genucel because it is a family recipe. It's made by a compounding pharmacist in small batches. It's always safe, it's cruelty-free, and it's natural. Now you can go to Genucel.com/Liz, and if you use my URL, you can save over 70% off Genucel's most popular package during their Mother's Day sale. Every most popular package features their ultra retinol and dark spot corrector. So don't wait. Go to Genucel.com/Liz and you can get a complimentary Spa Essentials box with every package order from now until Mother's Day, plus a free upgrade to priority shipping. That's GENUCEL.com/Liz, Genucel.com/Liz. Okay, so let's bring up this Reddit thread. I want to read you a couple of these testimonials that people have posted on Reddit about Jordan Neely. This was posted by a user whose username is Impossible Fishing. This is what he writes. This man jumped on me, grabbed my shoulders, and pushed me towards the tracks Sunday night at this very station. I was able to run away, but he got physical and chased other people standing on the platform before getting on an uptown train. Okay, so that's not only assault for someone to come up to you and push you by the shoulders, but to push you towards the tracks. If you do that intentionally, then that's the intent to kill somebody. That's attempted murder right there. Someone else says, I'm pretty sure I had a run-in with this guy a few weeks ago on the F. He was throwing around a city bike and yelling how he was going to kill people. Most left the car, but this poor Asian lady got stuck by him, so a few of us couldn't leave her alone with him. If it's the same guy, yeah, he was either going to get hurt by someone or whatever. Okay, so more violence. Another person says, I think I ran into him too. I was traveling on the F train last Monday where I saw him verbally abuse another passenger. He was cursing at the man sitting across from him, provoking him to fight. I got so scared when he stood up, but he got back down again and continued to scream insults. I'm thoroughly impressed with the passenger who kept his cool. Jeez, people just knew who he was because he was such a frequent, not only passenger on the subway, but he so frequently was violent on the subway, threatening to other passengers on the subway. Let me read you another one. Someone says, was he sort of staring into space, but like right at you at the same time, speaking very angrily? I wish there was a better picture of him in the article, but there was a guy on the train a few months ago who came right up to me and my two friends and threatened to kill us. We ignored him for what felt like a solid minute, and then he moved on to do the same thing to someone else. It was at 2 a.m., not sure what subway line it was. Someone else said, not sure if it was the same dude, but a couple months ago I was riding the F train on my way home. This random guy grabbed a bottle of liquor and started threatening everyone in the car while he was saying, he started staring at some random girl and threatened his boyfriend, yelling, now effing do something about it. Get an idea, get a picture of what this guy who Black Lives Matter is already starting to turn into some kind of martyr, what he was really like. Somebody else says, I was attacked by this man and pressured to fight him last spring at Union Square, openly assaulted on one of the busiest platforms for near 5 minutes, and not a single authority showed up. This man, Black Lives Matter, is trying to turn into a martyr. 44 times he was arrested on the subway for things like this, for assaulting people, for screaming obscenities, for harassing women, and for threatening to kill people, for physically assaulting them and threatening to kill them. So now this question of, okay, what happened in the lead up to this altercation that resulted in a chokehold, that resulted in the death of Jordan Neely? What was he doing? Was he screaming at someone in the car? Was he screaming obscenities? Was he harassing somebody? Was he touching them? Was he assaulting them? Was he pushing them towards the tracks? Was he trying to provoke them to a fight? Was he issuing death threats, saying that he wanted to kill them in addition to himself? What was he doing? What was he saying? This not only makes a difference, this makes all the difference in the world in analyzing this situation. But of course, these questions, the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't care about these questions. You and I care because we want to know what happened, because we want justice to be served. If there was an injustice that occurred, we want it to be, it can't be rectified per se, but if there was injustice, we want the person who committed injustice to be held accountable. We have to know what happened. The other side doesn't care. The other side doesn't care at all, because that's not the purpose of the Black Lives Matter. That's not the political agenda of the Black Lives Matter movement. By the way, we also don't know in what kind of drug-addled state Jordan Neely may or may not have been. We have not gotten results yet from the autopsy. Just like with George Floyd, he had drugs in his system. He had pre-existing health conditions that led him to the crisis that he experienced during those 7, 8, 9 minutes. We don't know anything about Jordan Neely's state. We don't know. But again, it doesn't matter, does it? Because the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't care. George Floyd taught us that. The racial element of this is the only thing that the Black Lives Matter movement cares about, and they are ignoring the two elements of racism that we know for a fact exist in this case, and instead accusing this Marine Corps veteran of essentially, I mean, they're using the word lynching on Twitter, a racial execution, even though they have zero evidence that that is the case. Zero evidence. The interesting part of this is to watch the left apply the playbook that they created first, in Ferguson with Michael Brown and then with George Floyd, watching them apply this playbook to another scenario where their narrative is a lie. We know already that their narrative is a lie, but they're using this exact same playbook. And what will be interesting to watch is whether people now in 2023 accept this the way that they did in 2020 or whether they reject it. Because I don't think there is a single issue or a single series of events like the Black Lives Matter riots of the summer of 2020, the summer of rage, that turned as many Democrats into Republicans. There's not a single issue or a single event that red-pilled more people into the lies of the left and drove them away from the Democratic Party. Because we were told they were fiery, but mostly peaceful protests. We were told that this was racial justice. As arson happened, violence happened, looting happened, Black-owned businesses were destroyed and damaged in the name of what? In the name of racial justice? Give me a break. Give me a break. Tell me how looting at GameStop brings justice for George Floyd. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's a justification for people who want to commit crimes to commit that crime and have a clear conscience, or so they think. The Black Lives Matter movement is just using Black people as their vanguard, because this is the thing. This is the thing. The $1 to $2 billion of damage inflicted by the Black Lives Matter rioters on private property is the goal of the Black Lives Matter movement. They are anti-capitalist. The assault on our criminal justice system, defunding the police, demonizing police, that is the goal of the Black Lives Matter movement. They want to destroy institutions in our country, the legal institutions in our country. Because Black Lives Matter doesn't care about Black people. They don't care about racism. They don't care about justice. They use those words to trick us. But what they really care about is Marxism. The organizers of the Black Lives Matter movement, Patrisse Cullors and Alicia Garza, admit that they are trained Marxists. They are agitating Black people against white people intentionally to spark those riots that we saw, to spark not only a race war, but a revolution, a Marxist revolution. That's why they're applying the same playbook. They're like, okay, a couple years, it's time to do this again. It's time to start this all over again. It's time to pit Black people against white people, put existential fear in the hearts and the minds and the bodies of Black people who think, just by nature of being Black, of having Black skin, that they are going to be the victims of either murder by white people or police-involved shootings that are unjustified and police officers won't be held accountable. Do you know what kind of feeling of desperation and anger that sparks inside of Black people? It's evil to instill that lie in the minds of Black people when it's not true. But what it does is it makes Black people revolt against white people because they're told the Black Lives Matter movement says it's white people's fault. It's white people who are oppressing you. The Black Lives Matter movement wants a Marxist revolution, and this is the way they agitate for it. Now, whether or not people will fall for it in 2023, the way that they did in 2020, that remains to be seen. But if you don't recognize the same playbook, if you don't recognize the same lies the Black Lives Matter movement is telling already about Jordan Neely, then you're a fool and you're being used as a pawn by the left. Okay, let's talk about Tucker Carlson, because somebody is coming for Tucker Carlson. And by somebody, I mean Fox News is attempting a character assassination of Tucker Carlson, and they're using the New York Times to help them do this. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but first I want to talk to you about Attorneys for Freedom. Specifically, I want to talk to you about the Attorneys on Retainer program. It's a new self-defense plan for gun owners that was created by Arizona criminal defense attorney Mark J. Victor and administered by his law firm, the Attorneys for Freedom. If you are a responsible gun owner, you may already have CCW insurance or have heard of these gun insurance plans. What you may not know is if the insurance company says the shooting was not justified as self-defense and you were convicted of a crime, the insurance company will not only drop your coverage, but you may be required to reimburse them. Now, I don't know about you, but as a responsible gun owner myself, I would not want to trust my self-defense shooting to an insurance company. I'd rather have the Attorneys for Freedom's experienced and aggressive criminal defense team on retainer 24/7. So if you're a gun owner and you want the legal defense without the endless exclusions of an insurance company, I highly recommend you join the Attorneys on Retainer Self-Protection Program. You can visit attorneysforfreedom.com/Liz and enter my promo code Liz25 to receive $25 off your sign up. That's attorneysforfreedom.com/Liz, promo code Liz25. Attorneysforfreedom.com/Liz, promo code Liz25. Okay, Fox News, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, what the motive of Fox News is in this attempted character assassination of Tucker Carlson. Clearly, it's Fox News behind this. We established that. If you didn't get a chance to listen to yesterday's episode, I recommend that you do. Not a lot of conservative pundits will analyze Fox News perfectly honestly because they're worried they may lose a spot appearing on a Fox News show, or they may not be hired at Fox News if they criticize any particular action taken by Fox News, even if it's not a larger commentary on or an all-encompassing commentary on the entire company. But we talked a little bit yesterday about what Fox News's motivation might be for trying to destroy Tucker Carlson's reputation after they fired him. And like I said, yesterday's show, go take a listen to that. The onslaught continues. Fox News is clearly behind this because all of this stuff that is being dropped about Tucker Carlson, the fact that Media Matters, quote unquote, obtained videos of Tucker Carlson that were the exclusive property of Fox News. Only Fox News would have had access to that footage on their servers. Only Fox News would have been able to give that footage to Media Matters. And if it had been some rogue staffer, Fox News would have come out immediately and said so. They didn't. So you can pretty much assume that Fox News executives sanctioned the release of that video undercover to Media Matters. The same for these text messages. The New York Times published an article showing a text of Tucker Carlson's. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do media organizations like the New York Times get access to the private text messages of Tucker Carlson? And this is actually a very good question. It's maybe where we should start this analysis. We should start by acknowledging what a brutal violation of privacy this is. What a brutal violation of Tucker's privacy this is. That's sending a text message that you assume is a private message between you and your producer, a personal conversation between you and someone you trust, where you're workshopping ideas, where you are commenting and putting together your thoughts and your argument on certain things that have happened, news of the day and moral issues, and trying to couple that with your personality, because on air, you don't just, unless you're a straight news anchor, you don't just read off the facts of what happened. You comment on it. You share your thoughts on it. For the New York Times to have access, I mean, think about what that would feel like. Pick up your phone right now and hold that in your hands and think about a text message that you sent to your spouse, or a text message that you sent to your best friend, or a text message that you sent to a trusted colleague, maybe about somebody else at work. Those are your private communications. You would be humiliated and devastated if those became public, and you have every right to be. You should not be subject to those communications being made public. Now, the reason that this text message was made public is because in the course of the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News, Tucker Carlson's personal text messages to other Fox employees were subpoenaed in court. Now, you can argue that there's justification for that in the course of an actual lawsuit. Courts have power to subpoena private records. Okay, that's fine. But even in court, this particular text message was redacted. This particular text message was blacked out in the court documents. The judge had not made a decision about whether the jury would be allowed to view this text message or not. And of course, it became a moot point because Fox News settled with Dominion before the trial started. In the 11th hour, they settled for, $800 million with Dominion, worth over 40 years of the revenue of Dominion. That's how much Fox News paid them. This text message should have been protected almost at all costs because it's the private communication of an individual who has a right for it to be the private communication. But let's talk about who could have possibly had access to this then. The lawyers at Fox News. That's who had access to this. The lawyers at Fox News. So the release of this text message to the New York Times, this was not something they dug up in a private court proceeding. This was not something they overheard. This was not something that was pseudo-public, that Fox was trying to keep under wraps. The only people who had access to this was Fox News, and law firms that were working for Fox News, which means that Fox News sanctioned the release of this text message to the New York Times for the same reason that they sanctioned the release of the videos of Tucker Carlson, the behind-the-scenes hot set videos, to Media Matters. They did this on purpose, knowing that it was a betrayal of Tucker's privacy because they're trying to destroy his reputation. So that's the background of this. And what the left is doing is doing exactly what Fox, I assume, hoped would happen. They're trying to vilify Tucker for one comment Tucker made in this text message while ignoring the rest of the text message. So let's read this first and then walk our way through it. This is what Tucker Carlson sent to his producer on January 7th of 2021. This was the day after the infamous January 6th. Tucker said, "A couple weeks ago, I was watching video of people fighting on the street in Washington. A group of Trump guys surrounded an Antifa kid and started pounding the living sheet out of him. It was 3 against 1 at least. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously. It's not how white men fight. Yet suddenly I found myself rooting for the mob against the man, hoping they'd hit him harder, kill him. I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. Then somewhere deep in my brain, an alarm went off. This isn't good for me. I'm becoming something I don't want to be. The Antifa creep is a human being. Much as I despise what he says and does, much as I'm sure I'd hate him personally if I knew him, I shouldn't gloat over his suffering. I should be bothered by it. I should remember that somewhere, somebody probably loves this kid and would be crushed if he was killed. If I don't care about those things, if I reduce people to their politics, how am I better than he is?" That's the text that the New York Times released. That's the text that the left is trying to use to crucify Tucker Carlson. So before we dive into the controversial part, the so-called controversial part of that text, I just want to say this is actually good news for Tucker, that this was released by Fox News to the New York Times, because not only does, in general, the text make him more likable because it shows him to be a very thoughtful and very humble person, it should get him out of any non-compete clause that Fox News has currently in his contract, because this is clearly a violation of almost everything ethical on the part of whoever it was that released the text to the New York Times. So good news for Tucker is he should be able to get out of that non-compete just by these things, just by these videos given to Media Matters and this text message given to the New York Times. So if you can look past the incredible invasion of privacy and the attempted character assassination, if I'm Tucker, I'm like, well, great, that my assumedly impending lawsuit against Fox News just got a lot easier for me. The text message. Also, a little bit more zoomed out view of this as we try to analyze this. Remember Tucker Carlson's relationship with Antifa. Prior to this text message, prior to January 6th, prior to any of this, Antifa showed up at Tucker Carlson's home in Washington, D.C. when he lived in Washington, D.C. Showed up at his home when Tucker was not home, but his wife was. Tucker's wife was at the home when Antifa mobs came to his neighborhood, came up his driveway, and started pounding on the door. His wife hid in a closet. She was so afraid that these Antifa thugs with a bloodlust for Tucker Carlson would harm her physically that she hid in a closet. This is what, I believe it's Vox wrote at, this is Washington Post, wrote at the time about Antifa assaulting Tucker Carlson's home. According to now deleted social media posts shared by Smash Racism DC, a local anti-fascist organization, that's Antifa, whose members had been tied to other demonstrations against prominent Republican figures, activists showed up outside Carlson's home Wednesday, and they had a message for him. "Tucker Carlson, we are outside your home," one person could be heard saying in the since deleted video. The person using a bullhorn accused Carlson of, quote, promoting hate and an ideology that has led to thousands of people dying. We want you to know. We know where you sleep at night, the person concluded before leading the group to chant, Tucker Carlson, we will fight. We know where you sleep at night. This is Tucker Carlson's relationship with Antifa. And yet, when he sees a video of 3 Trump supporters beating up an Antifa thug, he remembers not to reduce an Antifa thug who threatened physical violence against him and his family just to politics. He humanizes this person who assumedly wanted to kill him. I know Fox News or whoever it was that released this text message to the New York Times was intending to stage a character assassination of Tucker, but if you're anything like me, when you read this and you think about the context of this text message, it does the opposite. I mean, the videos that we watched last night from Media Matters made Tucker, showcase how hilarious he is, made him very likable, very funny. But this shows the deeper part of Tucker Carlson, the part that is both human. Remember, this propensity to sin or this propensity towards bloodlust exists in us all. It's called concupiscence. It's mankind's propensity to commit violence against someone else, mankind's propensity to sin. It's in us all. And Tucker Carlson was simply self-aware enough to recognize it when it entered his mind and to reject it and to analyze the reason why it came into his mind and to exert logic and love over the negative thoughts that he had and was humble enough to share that. Like I said, if you're anything like me, you actually have greater respect for Tucker Carlson. So maybe this attempted character assassination that's being staged of Tucker Carlson right now, maybe it will increase his following when he inevitably goes independent, whatever he's going to do next. So now let's talk about the so-called controversial part of this text. That's not the way that white men fight. The left is saying, oh, this makes Tucker Carlson such a racist. What did he mean by that? Because he said the word white, he said the word man. This is not the way white men fight. The insinuation the left says is that there's some inherent character qualities that exist in white men that, don't exist in black men? They're making tons of assumptions, tons of inferences that simply don't exist in this text message. And so a couple of comments that are worth thinking about. First of all, if a black person, a black man, instead of Tucker Carlson, had sent this text, and instead of saying that's not the way white men fight, if a black man had sent a text and said that's not the way black men fight, no one would say anything about it. The media wouldn't care. That person's character would not be demonized. The media would not attempt to vilify them. It would be a nothing story. The reason that the media cares about this is not because of what Tucker Carlson said. It's because Tucker Carlson is white. The media is treating Tucker Carlson differently, and differently in a negative way because of the color of his skin, which is racism. So that's the first thing that's worth noting. The second thing is no one knows. It's a text message, right? No one knows the way in which Tucker Carlson said this comment, what he meant by this comment. That's the problem with email. That's the problem with text messages. You don't have the nonverbals. You don't have the tone of voice. You could easily, as I did, read this as somewhat of sarcasm, right? You could read this as, oh, that's not the way that white men fight. You could read this as mocking white people for not knowing how to fight to win. There's so many different ways that you could read this. I mean, I'm not even going to bother going through all of these different iterations of possibilities of what was underlying this comment of Tucker Carlson. But that's what the left is doing. The left is assuming the worst possible motive that Tucker Carlson could possibly have meant by this sentence, while ignoring the context of the rest of the text message, which is humanizing people that he admittedly doesn't like. There's a big contradiction that exists there, right? Assuming that Tucker Carlson meant something inherently negative by this comment about white men, it meant something inherently negative about black people, while at the same time seeing Tucker Carlson display not only humility and self-awareness, but actually deliberately humanizing and giving dignity to someone who has threatened to kill his family. The two things simply don't match up. The left knows this. They're just hoping that you don't know this. They're hoping that they're hoping that you will simply buy into the idea, as they say, that Tucker Carlson is a virulent racist. And the reason they're making that accusation is because he's the most influential conservative commentator in the country, and they are afraid he will continue to be, even though Fox News fired him. Media Matters, additionally, at the same time that this New York Times piece came out, Media Matters released another video, and I will warn you, this video has just a little bit of a profanity in it, but this video was on set on Tucker Carlson's show. Tucker was discussing what he had done during the day. His show films in the evening, of course, filmed in the evening, and he was discussing what he had done on that particular day. That was the day that he sat through a deposition in the Dominion lawsuit. And as you will hear him say in this video, that deposition that he sat through was 10 hours long. And he was talking about how shady and creepy the Dominion lawyer who was questioning him for 10 hours before he went on air for his show was behaving towards him. So take a look at this.
Well, that was a week, I'll say. 10 hours. That slimy little sitting across from me. Oh, you're the best. And I wasn't talking about you. It's just the opposite.
He's giving me a compliment.
No, I'm not. What do you mean? Because you've never been this affirmed in your life? I bet. Thank you, Alex. Have a happy weekend. See you, man. The amount, it was so unhealthy, the hate. Thank you, Teresa. The hate that I felt for that guy. I mean, thank you, Todd.
How could you not?
I never feel that way, because I don't put myself, I don't want to feel that way. I think it's wrong. It's bad. It's totally bad for you to feel that way. But that guy, I mean, he triggered the out of me. Where are you now? Where do you live? The amount of times I had on my lips was like, it was unbelievable. Suggesting that I was cheating on my taxes?
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. So where are you domiciled? Where are you now? Do you own a home there? I was like, no, I do not own a home in Maine, which I don't, by the way.
Again, my reaction to this video is just, okay, so Tucker's a human being. So when someone was trying to trick him in court after a 10-hour deposition, he didn't like the person. Oh, call the presses. Not controversial at all, not scandalous at all. If anything, it shows, again, Tucker saying the amount of hatred that I felt for this person who was trying to trick me in a court of law was unhealthy. I don't want to feel that way. So, oh my goodness, he's holding himself accountable. This is the worst human being on the planet, according to Media Matters and according to the New York Times. But the larger picture here, the part that I find fascinating about this whole thing, this whole character assassination that's happening to Tucker Carlson, is since firing Tucker Carlson, I want to read you some statistics. Fox News' ratings in the younger demographic, the 25 to 54-year-old demographic have plummeted. They've plummeted. At the 6 p.m. hour, it's down 42%. At the 7 p.m. hour, it's down 62%. At the 8 p.m. hour, it's down 75%. At the 9 p.m. hour, it's down 70%. At the 10 p.m. hour, it's down 66%. And at the 11 p.m. hour, it's down 49%. These numbers are almost unheard of. To have 7 or 8 out of 10 people between the ages of 25 and 54 stop watching Fox News because Tucker is no longer there. This shows to me, not only the ratings, we knew this would happen. This shows to me the same way that the New York Times releasing this text message that probably Fox News gave them, and Media Matters releasing these videos that obviously Fox News gave them, they're out of touch. They don't know how to relate to Tucker Carlson's following, who is or was the backbone of the viewership on their channel. I said this at the very beginning. The moment that Tucker Carlson was fired, I said this is not just self-destructive of Fox News. This is the beginning of the end for cable news in general, because people, conservatives, especially younger demographics, are going to leave cable in droves. So it's not just going to hurt Fox. It's going to hurt all the cable news channels, even CNN and MSNBC, because a lot of their programming is built around hating Tucker Carlson and hating Fox News. And soon, the next generation already doesn't really get their news from cable news anyway. The next generation isn't going to pay any attention to what's happening on cable news, and they're going to fade. They're going to become completely obsolete. And perhaps this was the beginning of the end. We're going to keep following the story because I find things, especially in my own industry, really interesting. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think as well. So let me go to lizwheeler.com and send me a note on our contact form. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.